Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, Soul Talk and Psychic Advice. Today, we're talking about a relationship pattern that is incredibly common among empaths, healers, caregivers, coaches, therapists, and spiritually sensitive people, and honestly, many people who simply have big hearts. We're talking about the overgiver. The overgiver is often the person someone loves to have in their life. They're generous, thoughtful, supportive, reliable, and very compassionate. They show up. They remember the birthdays. They check in on people. They help without being asked. They give their time, energy, resources, emotional support, and attention freely. From the outside, it looks beautiful, and in many ways it is. But beneath the generosity is often something deeper, a wound, a belief, right? A survival strategy. Because the overgiver doesn't just give, they overgive. They give beyond their capacity. They give beyond their resources. They give beyond their emotional limits. And eventually they become exhausted, resentful, burned out, and disconnected from themselves. Today's episode isn't about being less kind. No, it's about understanding why people struggle to stop giving, even when it's hurting them. And I'm an overgiver in recovery. Because true love is not self-sacrifice. It isn't. True love includes you too. And the more you overgive, the more you're going to feel empty at one point because you're thinking, I'm giving, people are naturally going to give back. No, they just take more. And they forget that you need anything because you're just a happy-go-lucky overgiver. And all of a sudden, when you need someone, no one's going to be there. So remember, true love includes you, and you deserve to receive as much as you give. And if you're an overgiver, you have got to work on being a better receiver. What is an overgiver pattern? What is it? The overgiver is someone who constantly gives more than they receive in relationships. They are often the first to help, just being helpful. I'm a good person, I'm spiritual, I'm a Christian. They're the first to volunteer, the first to show up, the first to offer support, the last to ask for anything in return. Overgivers often become the emotional support system for everyone around them. People naturally turn to them, depend on them, lean on them. And because the overgivers are so capable, they often carry responsibilities that were never theirs to carry. The problem isn't generosity. Generosity is beautiful. It is to an extent. It's nice to give, but and when somebody calls you selfish if you stop giving, they're trying to guilt you to stay in that overgiving pattern. You be generous, but not to the point where it hurts you financially. There are people who will give their bill money to somebody else so that they can make their bills when maybe that person spent their money on something else. And that's why they don't have their bill money. They're not necessarily giving to somebody who's really struggling. If you're an overgiver, you gotta get rid of the takers in your life and start healing the overgiving. So, where generosity is beautiful, the problem is imbalance. The problem is when giving becomes a requirement for feeling worthy, loved, valuable, or safe. The hidden belief beneath overgiving. Most overgivers aren't consciously trying to lose themselves. They are often operating from a belief they learned very early in life. A belief such as, I earn love through giving, my true value from helping, yes. If I take care of everyone, I be loved. My needs aren't as important. I have to be useful. I need to prove my worth. And if you're making more than people around you, you may feel like you got to cover all the dinners and lunches and events and help people pay their bills. And I'm going to do a separate podcast on that. I remember hearing how when Chris Tucker, first became a millionaire, all of his family members quit their job. And he said, "Why you quit your job?" And they're like, "We're rich." And he goes, "No, when I was poor, you guys weren't saying we were poor together. You weren't helping me. And now that I have money, it doesn't mean that we are all rich." So even if you have money, yes, be generous to an extent, but don't set up relationships where people assume that you're going to cover everything. Sometimes do it, but not all the time do it. Don't put yourself in that situation. Don't let anybody guilt you and say you have more money, because how did you get that money? How hard did you work? Did you sacrifice weekends, evenings? Did you not go to social events? You put in the work to get there somehow. And where some people may not like that, think about it. And I really have to do a podcast on this. You want to give, but you don't want to be used. Where the over pattern begins, let's get into this. Like many relationship patterns, overgiving often begins in childhood. Perhaps you were praised for being helpful. Perhaps you became the responsible child, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the emotional support system. Maybe you learned that being useful earned approval. Maybe you felt responsible for a parent's emotions. That happens, unfortunately, a lot, where adults are putting that responsibility on their children. Maybe your own needs weren't consistently met. We were poor, and I think I became an overgiver because, and I've told this story before, how we were living in a motel and we didn't even have money for the room, and there was a lock on the door, so if all of us left, we were going to be locked out and homeless out of a motel room. And it was me and my mom and three siblings. So there's six of us in this motel room. And there's a lady down the way who was a prostitute. And she paid our bill. And as I got older and I thought about that, and I thought about how she put her life on the line to pay our bill, that really did a number on me. And I said, wow, she could sacrifice, I can too. And that's how I became an overgiver. And that's why when I see people in need, I'm just like, I gotta help, I gotta help. But you gotta do it within balance, because there was a time when I was helping so much to where I wasn't saving, I wasn't taking care of my responsibilities, and I didn't have a financial cushion. So you really have to find out why you overgive. Where does it come from, and heal that. And I always wish I could see that person again and thank them for what they did. And I probably don't even know if they're alive still, because this was back in the 70s. But that's where my overgiving started, and I wanted to share this with you guys. Maybe your own needs weren't consistently met, and perhaps love always felt conditional, because often it does for a lot of homes, even in two-parent homes. You may have unconsciously learned this. You've learned this. If you help, you're valuable. If you perform, you're loved. If you sacrifice, you belong. If I take care of others, I'll be accepted. These lessons become deeply embedded. And sadly, narcissists will find you. Users will find you. It will. And they will see you as weak and someone that they could take advantage of. They will target you. As adults, many overgivers continue operating from the same survival strategy. Only now it's affecting friendships, romantic relationships, families, businesses, and even spiritual communities. And it's true. It's everywhere. How you do anything is how you do everything. That's just the truth about us. We can't always compartmentalize. And if you're an overgiver in relationships, you're really going to feel depleted. You're probably going to attract the wrong type of partner. In business, it doesn't work. You go out of business. Friendships, oh boy, will you get some toxic friends that don't respect you. And this shouldn't happen in spiritual communities either, but sometimes spiritual communities have a lot of wounded people in them, and they're looking for healing, and they're not healing quick enough because they're bypassing. So it gets messy. So let's talk about when love and sacrifice becomes the same thing. One of the biggest challenges for overgivers is that they often confuse love with sacrifice. Somewhere along the way, they learned love means giving, love means serving, love means putting yourself last. No, it does not, but people believe that. Love means caring other people. No. Love means enduring discomfort. Heck no. Love means never being selfish. You have got, I don't even think it's selfish, but we just use the term. You've got to be selfish sometimes. You've got to. And people won't like it when you are, and they try to call you out. Ignore them because those are not your people. They're exposing themselves as not being your people. The problem is that healthy love does not require self abandonment. It doesn't. Healthy love it includes reciprocity, right? It's reciprocal. If you're a giver, you have got to get with a giver. If you're with a taker thinking, I'm going to love them whole and all that stuff, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer. Just listen to the stories on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere else. You're going to suffer. Healthy love includes boundaries. Healthy love includes mutual care. If one person is always sacrificing while the other is always receiving, that's not balance. That's depletion. And you will feel depleted. You cannot operate like this. It does not work. Let's talk about the guilt of resting. Let's talk about something many overgivers struggle with: rest. For many people, rest feels restorative. It is restorative. Our body needs to rest. That's why we sleep. For overgivers, rest often feels uncomfortable. It's triggering. They can't sit still. They get antsy. I got to be doing something. I got to keep busy. You know, why? Because productivity and helping have become tied to self-worth. When they're helping, they feel valuable. And you see this even like the mothers in the family. They're like, I just gotta help. I do everything. I help the kids. I'm there for my spouse and for the community and the church and the school. And, they're constantly frantically helping and being everywhere, and they can't sit still. Yes. And so they feel valuable when they're helping. When they're busy, they feel purposeful. The people, I just got to be busy, busy, busy. That's why the pandemic was so hard for some people. It was triggering in that way because it brought up a lot of stuff. That's why people were acting difficult and mean and weird, because it was bringing up all the shit that they're trying to avoid in life. When they're giving, they feel needed. But when they stop, the guilt arrives. They may think, I should be doing something. I should be helping someone. I should be more productive. Yes. And they will call them own selves lazy. They will say they're not being a good enough person. I should be resting. I don't deserve a break. Rest can feel selfish, but rest is not selfish. And if you don't rest, your body will make you rest. You trigger an illness, you trigger an injury, and your body will force you to rest. Talk to a lot of people who have had injuries and stuff. They were probably overgivers and everything else. Rest is a biological need. Rest is how we replenish. Rest is how we remain connected to ourselves. Rest is necessary, can't be avoided. Even if you just feel like I'm doing nothing, I'm sitting for a half hour. Sometimes just sit still for like a half hour. Find a way. Just kind of sit and tune in to yourself. And maybe you can use that time for manifesting or visualizing or creating a feeling of something great happen, but tune into yourself. The overgiver in relationships, and this is where it really becomes a disaster. Overgivers often attract relationships that feel one-sided, not because they're choosing poorly on purpose. No, because who will choose poorly on purpose? But because their generosity creates a dynamic where others become accustomed to receiving. Ooh, tell me about it. In relationships, overgivers often initiate conversations, solve problems. And I could tell you, doing my work, everybody thought they were going to come to me to solve their problems. And I say, no, I do this for a living. And when I'm not working, I want to not do it. And hey, some people walked away, and I'm like, good, because it was going to become a one-sided relationship. And I told one person, okay, you can tell me your problems, but I'm going to tell you mine. They didn't want to hear mine. They just thought I would help them. And if you are doing healing work or energy work or a psychic or a coach, you'd be surprised when people think, oh, if we're friends, I could just have you listen to my problems for free. And so they're already telling you who they are that they want to take. And they're not going to say, hey, we support each other. Never be friends with someone who isn't showing you that they will support you as much as they want you to support them. And do not set yourself up to always be the listener. But you know you can't get the same. All of a sudden they listen for 2 minutes and they're busy, got to go. Really tune in to your relationships. I had to get rid of a lot of relationships throughout the years. And I have a clear boundary with people. I say, look, I do this for a living. I don't want to have relationships where I'm giving advice and I'm the coach and the therapist and the healer. I don't want that. I want equal friendships. So I choose friends who have gone to therapy or have done their inner work, and if we have a problem, we have a solution for it, and we don't sit with it as much. So you got to have some type of boundaries, and don't let people tell you or friends listening to each other. Yes, when there's something really tough, but don't you know there's some friends who constantly have something going on and they want people to listen? And that's why as professionals exist, so that you come to us and you don't ruin your friendships. You tell us because we can't tell your business. We're not going to judge you, and you're safe, and you can keep your relationships balanced and intact. So, overgivers provide the emotional support, but they don't get it back. They make sacrifices, but nobody sacrifices for them. They accommodate everyone else's needs. They adjust themselves constantly. And because they rarely express their own needs, people may not even realize they're struggling. No, a lot of times they don't even know. Eventually, resentment appears. The overgiver begins thinking, why am I the only one trying? Why am I doing everything? Why does why doesn't anyone support me? The painful truth is that many overgivers teach people that they don't need support because they never asked for it. That is the painful truth. That is the truth about overgivers. So why receiving is so uncomfortable? It is for the overgiver. If you can't receive, you can't manifest. If you can't receive, you can't manifest. One of the most fascinating aspects of the overgiver pattern is how difficult receiving can feel. Compliments feel awkward. Help feels uncomfortable. And it may feel awkward to be complimented from the overgiver, but they're complimenting everybody else. The overgiver is always complimenting people. Help feels very uncomfortable. Support feels unfamiliar. Many overgivers would rather struggle alone than ask for assistance. The people who are just so independent, been there, um, they will struggle alone. They feel so uncomfortable asking for help for two reasons. One, they feel like, I don't know how to ask for help. I've never really needed it. And also, they're like, who's going to show up for me? And they're struggling with receiving. That's why they struggle with asking for assistance. Because receiving requires vulnerability, and overgivers aren't being vulnerable. Receiving means admitting a need. Receiving means allowing someone else to contribute. Receiving means surrendering control. Yes, overgivers, there is a subtle control. Control isn't always aggressive, right? It can be very subtle. When you're the overgiver and the doer and everything, it's a form of control. And for someone who has spent years proving their worth through giving, receiving can feel deeply uncomfortable. Yet receiving is essential. Relationships cannot thrive when energy only flows in one direction. It won't survive. And one day the overgiver's going to wake up angry, hurt, and upset. The nervous system of the overgiver. As a somatic practitioner, I want to emphasize that overgiving is often a nervous system adaptation. Many overgivers developed what is known as a fond response. I believe there's a podcast on the fond response. The nervous system learn, stay helpful, stay agreeable, stay useful, meet everyone's needs, avoid conflict, keep people happy. This response helped create safety in the past, but now it may be creating exhaustion. Many overgivers are living in a state of chronic nervous system activation, constantly scanning for who needs something, you know, constantly giving, constantly responding, constantly caring. A lot of healthcare professionals are overgivers, or at least they're getting paid to be overgivers, and they're going to be great at what they do, especially the nurses who are overgivers. They're going to give some good care. The body never fully rests, and eventually burnout follows. It will follow. It's pretty much a given. The overgiver among healers, empaths, and spiritual people. The pattern is especially common in spiritual communities. Empaths often feel other people's emotions. Healers want to reduce suffering. Coaches want to support growth. Psychics often sense what others are experiencing, and it's tough. These gifts are beautiful, but they can become distorted when combined with overgiving. You may find yourself giving free emotional labor, answering messages at all hours. Don't do it, been there. Feeling responsible for everyone's healing, absorbing others' pain. You got to find those energetic boundaries. Putting your own needs last, overextending your energy. Many healers secretly believe if I help enough, I'll be worthy. If I give enough, I'll be loved. If I sacrifice enough, I'll be successful. But true service is not self-destruction. No, no, no. And true service requires sustainability. You cannot pour endlessly from an empty cup. You hear this all the time. People don't pay attention. But we hear this all the time. You can't pour from an empty cup. And people go, I don't feel empty. You will if you're overgiving. So let's talk about healing the overgiving, the overgiver pattern. Let's talk about healing. Number one, learn to notice your needs. And don't be afraid of your needs. Start asking, what do I need right now? What am I feeling? What would support me? The simple practice can feel revolutionary, something that a lot of people don't tune into, asking what do they need. They just want other people to know. If people love me, they know. No, you must know what you need and you must communicate that. Two, practice receiving. Allow compliments, accept help. Let people support you. Let someone carry something for you. Receiving is a skill, and like any skill, it strengthens with practice. Three, release the guilt around rest. Rest is not something you earn. Rest is something you need. You do not have to exhaust yourself before you're allowed to recover. Don't let yourself get sick. Don't let it get that far. Set boundaries around giving. Before saying yes, ask, do I genuinely want to do this? Get honest with yourself. Not that I'm trying to be a good person. I can't say no, this will hurt the person. Don't do that. Or am I afraid of disappointing someone? That's usually what it's about. That question alone can change your life. 5. Redefine love. Love is not sacrifice. Love is not depletion. Love is not self-abandonment. Healthy love includes mutual care, mutual respect, mutual responsibility, mutual support. So there you have it. And I am going to close this out. My closing thoughts. If you've recognized yourself in today's episode, I want you to know this. Your generosity is beautiful. Your compassion is beautiful. Your desire to help is beautiful. The goal is not to become less caring. That isn't what anybody's saying here. The goal is learning that your needs matter too. Wow, imagine that. You are not here solely to support everyone else. You're not here solely to carry burdens. You are not here solely to give. You're also here to receive. Can't manifest without being able to receive, to rest, to be supported, to be nurtured, to be cared for, to experience relationships that feel reciprocal rather than draining. The healthiest relationships are not the ones where one person gives everything. They're the ones where care flows in both directions. So if you're an overgiver, I invite you to begin practicing a new belief. That belief is, I do not have to earn love through sacrifice. I am worthy of love because I exist. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for listening. And until next time, be gentle with yourself, honor your needs, trust your inner wisdom, and remember, the most loving thing you may ever do is stop abandoning yourself while trying to care for everyone else. Again, thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.